Rob, what got you into fitness? What got you into training? And I know you played football and everything, but what got you into this field?
I think I really have to give credit to my dad and my brother. My brother was about 9 years older than me, and I was this overweight kid. I was always tall, but I was overweight. And my dad and my brother started getting me exercising around the house, and they really didn't necessarily know what they were doing, but they planted the seed. They laid a foundation. And my brother started taking me to his gym when I was young. I was 12, 13 years old. And I just loved the atmosphere. I loved challenging myself. And really, if I could pinpoint one other key point in the journey for me, when I was in the seventh grade, my dad took me to my first Penn State game. It was kind of a famous Penn State Nebraska game where Todd Blackledge threw a last second touchdown to win the game. And I grew up in the Pennsylvania coal region, and football and wrestling were king, but I was a baseball player, and it was literally that game that kind of galvanized my love for football. And I can remember walking out of Beaver Stadium, looking at my dad, going, "Yeah, I'm going to play here someday." And
Yeah.
making that promise to him was essentially the promise to myself that I'm going to work my tail off. So that was really the foundation.
Yeah, Rob, that's interesting because being from here, you love Penn State football. You're if you're not a Penn State football fan, then you either hate Penn State football or you love Penn State football. Most people love it because that's all you hear about here. So that's interesting that that's what got you started. Now you did you played high school football.
Mhm.
And then what did you do after that?
So make what could be a long story relatively short. Um, I had a pretty solid junior season. Started hearing from a lot of people, Penn State,
Mhm.
Notre Dame, NC State, Georgia Tech, all the academies. And aside from the academies, it was really all predicated on if you grow, and I didn't. So again, there's a lot of in betweens, but I ended up going to prep school for a year because by the time we realized the big school scholarships weren't going to happen, I was um, I was a preferred walk on at Penn State and a number of other places, but everybody was out of money. So I did a postgraduate year of prep school at Milford Academy in Connecticut, and then ended up at Bucknell.
And I remember you talking about that when you were at Bucknell, you had an injury. It was squatting, right? Is that how that happened?
Yeah, I don't want to put a black eye on squats, but I herniated a disc in my back doing a submaximal squat test my freshman year at Bucknell, and it really had a huge impact on not only my college career, but on the rest of my life. I've had back issues on and off ever since.
Yeah, I I've had that same thing, not that serious, but sometimes I'm doing squats and feel a pinch in my back and it hurts. I mean, that kind of stuff can happen, especially as you get older. I'm 31 now and I can't really do what I did when I was like 20, 21, unfortunately. But yeah, it can happen so easily. But it sounds like, Rob, that when that happened, did that inspire you to get into training people more? Because it kind of ended your football career in a way.
Well, I played after that, but I was just never really myself after the injury. So yes and no. I was a pre-med as an undergrad. I was pretty heck bent on becoming an orthopedic surgeon. But as you know, I grew up in a small town, blue collar
Mhm.
family, and I knew nothing about business. And my dream was to have an orthopedic center in which we had a training facility attached to it. And I decided after school that I was going to take a year or two off and go out and work and get some real world experience, which I did. But during that time, that was when I really fell in love with training. I started going to conferences and
Yeah.
meeting people, and I didn't realize how much research and knowledge was out there. And as I started going to conferences, it was a big eye opener for me. and decided that med school wasn't really the path I wanted to follow.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like I said, I've been in your gym for a few years. I heard of your gym before I was even in there. But that a lot of athletes had gone in there. Was there were you trying to get into this to specifically help athletes improve? And were you trying to work with a specific kind of athlete, like potential D1 athlete or just D1 athletes, or you've coached everyone. You've coached professional athletes all the way down. So were you trying to help any particular group when you got into it?
Yeah, so my big passion was athletes, and I thought the higher the better. I'll tell you what happened in between. In between, early on in my career, I was mostly training adults because those were the people I had access to, and those are the people that were paying the bills. And I realized that, there's something called the adult athlete, which you are. And there's a lot of satisfaction in helping an adult to either reattain a level of fitness that they didn't think they could get back to, or even attain a level of fitness they never thought was possible. There's also a tremendous amount of satisfaction in working with a kid that's in eighth grade and really has passion and desire to be great and is willing to do whatever it takes, and you see it through. Like, what some people are surprised with is I'm still coaching. Like, I literally just got done with a coaching session with a kid who's probably going to end up being a Division III college football player, and another guy who currently is a Division II college football player. But the guy that's going to be the D3 player, and I say this in front of him, 3 years ago, if you'd have been standing there with his coaches uh, and said, "Hey, this kid's going to be a college football player," and let's start this, he's going to be a starter at pretty big high school. Um, his coaches would have been like, yeah, probably not. But this kid's been all in. He's changed his diet. He's on top of his sleep, and he trains like crazy. And he has transformed himself. And there's a ton of satisfaction in walking a kid through that journey. I would tell you, for me, more satisfaction than there is taking a guy who's a Division I player and trying to get him to the pros sometimes. We had a guy this fall or this spring that worked with us from Lock Haven, who was just a great young guy, Chris Collier, who's with the Ravens right now. Chris was awesome. Loved working with him, but love the high school guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I coached 1 year. It was just junior high track and field. Something I'm going to get into more as my life goes on. But watching these guys go from young kids to college athletes or whatever it is, it's very cool to watch. And you see that a lot because you work with a ton of different people.